Conrad Vernon, co-director of Sausage Party, one of the funniest movies I've seen all year, live action or animation. So funny. I just want to know how you got involved in this project.
I got involved about in 2009. I got involved, and that was
Really? Wow.
yeah, that was when I was directing Monsters vs. Aliens. Excuse me, with and Seth Rogen was in it, and we got to know each other on that movie. And after it came out, I'd say about 3 months after it came out, I got a call from him in my car. And he said, "Hey, we have a project. Evan and I have a project we'd like to pitch to you. You have any interest in coming over to my house tonight and hearing what it is?" And of course, I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I went over to his place. He and Evan and Jonah Hill were there, and it was a little surreal. And I sat down and got in the right state of mind. And they just kind of looked at me and said, "Okay, we have an R-rated animated feature that we want to do, and it's about a bunch of hot dogs that escape their packagings to go have sex with buns," basically is the way they put it. And it's called Sausage Party. And the pitch was hilarious, quick, and I've been wanting to do something like this since I was 13 years old. So I was like, fantastic, this sounds great. I immediately signed on right then and there. I was like, let me think about it. And none of that. I was just like, I'm in.
It does seem like a simple premise, but when I actually watched it, there was so much going on with religion and sexuality and everything. And I couldn't believe how much depth there was to this raunchy R-rated animated film.
Well, that's what it eventually turned into. The first pitch was, something that even, Seth says in his interviews that when he and Jonah were out doing publicity for one of their movies that they were in together, they'd say, what's the next thing you're working on? And they would joke, a film called Sausage Party, because it sounded like something that they would be writing and starring in. And it was a joke until, they sat down with Evan and they started just pitching ideas back and forth and said, this could actually be a very funny movie. So, it was just really simple jokes about food, and hot dogs wanting to fuck buns and all this kind of stuff. So that's where it started. But, we realized quickly that we couldn't fill 80 minutes with that. So that's when we started, kind of fleshing out the world a little bit more, like where, how are we going to, represent the aisles? What do the food think? We're not going to have the food running around outside the grocery store all over the place. So I guess their entire world is the grocery store. So we had to actually build a world out of the grocery store. And I think that's where a lot of that religion and people getting along together from each aisle all came from. The culture of the grocery store, yeah.
Seth just seems like the nicest guy in Hollywood. But tease him a little bit. What's his worst quality? Let's bring him down to earth.
What's his worst quality? God, you're putting me on the spot here. I don't know if it's a bad quality, but it's actually a good quality. Shit. He works really, really hard. So I guess it's a good and a bad quality. He's so focused and he works so hard, and it's just like he's got 5 things going when he's working on his current thing. I don't think it's a bad quality at all, but I look and I go, man, you're on top of the world. Go sit on the island of Tahiti for a while or something.
Right. Take a break. Take a vacation.
Yeah. But they're working on 10 things at once, and it just kind of amazed me at how hard they work and how focused and driven they are, and how unbelievably professional they can be under the influence, so to speak. So I don't know if that's a bad quality or a good quality, but it's definitely a quality that amazes me.
Was there any pushback from the studio or the production team that maybe, we should hold back a little bit? We shouldn't go full orgy, in other words. We should maybe, scale back. Was there ever any pushback at all like that for you, for
No.
Sausage Party? No?
No, the orgy was in the script, so everyone knew exactly what they were getting into. And we even did a 2-minute test piece of the orgy, We were trying to figure out, okay, we want to do a test piece to show them how the film's going to look and, you know, what we're going for here, because no one could get it, you know, just from the script and the drawings that we had. People just weren't connecting with what we were going for. And we said, well, what are we going to do for a test piece? And everybody just immediately, well, we got to do the orgy, because that's definitely going to be in the movie, no matter what. There was a little, you know, what was great about all this is the only hesitation and the only questioning about where we draw the line was pretty much left up to us. You know, my directing partner, Greg, and Seth and Evan and I. We were the arbiters of our own taste, you know, so to speak. And so there was never any pushback. There was, like, you know, with Brenda's lips, those vertical vaginal lips that we put on the bun, everyone was laughing their asses off when they saw the first design. And they said, holy shit, we got to go for this. We got to go for this. And, you know, even when we put it past, you know, everybody, you know, at Annapurna and Sony, they laughed at the lips, but no one ever pushed back. And I remember when we took Megan Ellison and the people from Annapurna up to Nitrogen Studios in Canada, and even Seth and Evan came up to me and said, are you sure we're going to be able to get away with the vagina lips on the bun? And we heard from behind us, Megan Ellison said, if you don't put those lips on the bun, I'm not making the movie. So we were like, yeah, great. So they were 100% behind it.
You mentioned your co-director, Greg Tiernan. Talk us through what it means to have a co-director. Who handles what aspect of the film?
I've worked with you know, a few directors on all my films, actually. But I wanted Greg on this in particular because he and I worked on Cool World together, and we used to draw filthy cartoons for each other and make each other laugh and everything. So we've already had that kind of rapport between the two of us. And I immediately thought of him for this movie because A, he owns a studio, but B, I know that his sense of humor. You know, I know this is perfectly up his alley, right up his alley, and that he wouldn't hold back. So not only was I friends with him for 20 years, but I knew he wouldn't hold back, and I knew that this is something he would get. I also knew that he would, you know, be owning the studio, that he would be, you know, not only directing this with me, but making sure that the studio was there to support the film in the best way possible. They didn't take any other outside work while they were working on this. This was their sole focus, you know, for the entire 2.5 years we were making it. We didn't split up any, you know, jobs, you know, like you do this and I do this. We did everything 50-50. And if we had a disagreement, we didn't leave the room until we figured it out. And what was great is that we didn't have a lot of disagreements back and forth. You know, he basically said right off the bat, look, you brought this to us. This is something that Seth and Evan asked you to do, and you brought us into it. So if there is any final decision calling, you know, I'm going to leave that to you. Luckily, that never really happened because we just worked it all out. And, you know, we were on the same page creatively through the whole thing. So, so there was never any, why don't you take care of the animation? I'll take care of the layout. Why don't you go do the lighting and I'll do the storyboarding? It was, you know, we were, you know, kind of attached at the hip. He calls me, you know, he calls himself my movie wife. So, you know, so it's basically what it was. It was a 2.5-year relationship, and creatively it was great.
The great Alan Menken did the music and the song for this. I think I looked on IMDb. I think he has 8 Oscars. Were you tempted to steal any of his Oscars during the process of this movie?
Well, you know, I went to his house once. We were working on another project together, and I went up to his house for 2 days. And I was sitting, you know, he has his computer set up, and right behind him, he's got this gigantic case, and he's got like his 8 Oscars, his 5 Tonys, his 7 Grammys, or, you know, whatever it is, and they're all there. And he just, like, you know, geez, that's incredible. You know,
he gives them out for Halloween treats. Like,
yeah, exactly. Sunk into their plastic pumpkins. It was pretty impressive to look at that. He's also, you know, and those are just the big awards. He's got like glass plaques and little gold statues of Mickey Mouse and, you know, all these different things around, but he kind of just acts like they're just decorations, you know.
Mm.
Treat them like the curtains. So
He was on board, right? You guys didn't have to force him to do this. He wanted to do this project.
yeah, like I said, he and I were working on another project together, and I walked in while we were meeting. We were going to do a musical which had a number of songs in it. While we were meeting for that, you know, I know we were looking for someone to do the music and Sausage Party, but we had very little money. So I basically looked at the two guys, you know, he and his lyricist Glenn Slater, and I said, do you guys know anyone who is like you guys but will work for no money? and Glenn raised his hand and said, I work cheap. You know, because I pitched him Sausage Party, and he said, that sounds like a fun movie to work on. I work cheap. And Alan said, well, if he's going to do it, then I guess you've dragged me into it as well. I'll do it. And I was like, wait a minute, you guys are going to do this for the little money that we have? And they said, sure, it sounds like fun. So Alan was on board. You know, I didn't even pitch it to them thinking that they would do it. I thought this would just be, you know, not enough money, not their type of thing. They loved it. And Alan and his manager and Glenn came to see an early screening of it when it was in boards, and they went crazy for it. They couldn't believe it. So I think they really enjoyed working on it.
On IMDb, it says you did the voice of 3 characters. You did toilet paper, sauerkraut, and cat call sausage. What kind of research went into studying for these roles?
Research?
That's a question that we like to ask actors, but
zero.
Zero. It was probably fun.
Other than using all 3 products at one point, that's pretty much all the research I did for any of those. What we do is we have a version of the film that's storyboarded out. I'm in SAG, so I can do voices, and so before we get the actor in, we have what it's called scratch dialogue, and so before we get the actor in to put the actor's voice in the movie, we have a temporary voice or a scratch voice. And so I would just jump up in front of the mic, you know, and do the voice, and then we'd stick it in the movie until we found someone better to do it. Everyone liked the voices that I did for toilet paper, cat call sausage, and the Hitler sauerkraut. So they said, we'll just leave that. You know, that's funny. There was a board artist named Scott Underwood who did 7 voices in the movie, and he had never done voice work before. But the voices that he did were so good. We tried replacing him with other voices, but his voices were so good. He played Gum, he played Twink, he played the pizza, he played the bag of chips. You know, he did a bunch of things. So a lot of us were just having fun, you know, putting scratch in. But if the voice fits, you know, wear it. So I guess so.
Gum was pretty funny.
Yes.
So you've also directed Madagascar 3 and Shrek 2 and Monsters vs. Aliens. What is it about animation that keeps you coming back for more and more?
I think that you're creating an entire world. Nothing is taken for granted in any of these worlds, and you can style things any way you want to. There's no reality that you have to adhere to. Even with the design of things, with the grocery store, instantly we were looking at pictures of grocery stores, and what we saw were aisles stacked with products, which couldn't be more boring. Even in the script, in the very first drafts of the script, we were, it would say they turn the aisle. And they turn the aisle, and they walk around to the next aisle, and they walk around to the next aisle. And we were immediately saying, we can't just walk, turn a corner 15 times in the movie. And we can't have just regular aisles either. It'd just be so boring, just clunk, 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 all the way across. This has to feel like a journey. It's got to feel like a world. It's got to feel like they've gone on this huge adventure. So we immediately said, okay, well, let's get to the aisles by crawling over the top of them, by going through the middle of them, by being captured and taken, to the next aisle, or just basically just cutting to the next aisle in a really interesting way, like in the liquor aisle. So between that and having each aisle represent a different country, like the Asian aisle and the Greek aisle and the German aisle and the Mexican aisle, even the frozen food section and the seafood section, all those became huge worlds. They became countries that we traveled through. And I think that's animation just kind of really naturally lends itself to that. I mean, the live action movies, since the dawn of the computer, graphic, since computer graphics came in, have gotten more animated than actual just shooting. Practical effects gave you a limitation. They look really beautiful and great. I love practical effects. But once the computer came in, that world creation, that building, became possible in such huge ways for even live action films. So I feel like even live action films now are animated in a certain. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy has the raccoon in it, and so that's an animated character, fully 100% animated character. And I think that's what I love is the amount that you can do in the art form of animation.
And in terms of Oscars and award shows, this is a very strong year for animated films. What would it mean for you guys to get in, let's just say the Oscars for Best Animated Feature for Sausage Party? What would that mean for you guys?
It would mean, I think, a hell of a lot for us to get a nom, because, when we start out doing this, we weren't just doing this to titillate people or to say, look at these cartoon characters, they're cursing and they're having sex, isn't it funny? It was a much, much bigger thing that we were trying to do, and in my mind, something for the industry overall, where for years I've felt that animation has been underused, and there's so much you can do with it. Just what it lends itself, like I was speaking of earlier, what it lends itself to live action is huge. But even in fully animated films, there's a lot more you can do. There's different genres that you can, do in animation. You can do horror films, I believe. You can do horror films. You can do dramas. You can do, whatever you want in animation. And just taking this first step into an R rating, showing that there is an adult audience for animation, that there is, financially viable ways of making these movies. For a different audience, hopefully kicks down the door and kind of lets people know that animation is an art form and a medium used to tell a story, not a genre in and of itself. So I think that's getting a nomination for an Academy would really kind of give us the credence that we need to continue making movies like this, and to hopefully let other people know that they can as well, and more. And it just means so much for the industry to be able to do that. It means more jobs. It means bigger selection of animated films. I think it would just really help the whole industry a lot if people started broadening the audience for animated movies. That's what I think it will do, personally.
I just love the movie so much. It's great talking to you today. And before we let you go, can you tease anything about what's next in your career? I think maybe there's a Pixar movie on the horizon.
That is an untrue rumor.
Oh.
I saw that and I was like, well, that's interesting. But no, I don't know who put that up. That's not true. At the moment, I am working at Sony, helping out on the Emoji Movie. I am working on it hasn't been announced yet, so I won't say much about it, but it's an animated adult TV series with Annapurna, and also The Toxic Avenger. It was reported that I'm directing that, which is true. And I always like to say when I talk about that it's not I'm not remaking it, because remaking it assumes that I'm going to be taking the original story and trying to do it better. And I would never even think that I could take what people love about the original, what I love about the original, when I saw it in high school in the 80s, and do it better. I mean, people have their their childhoods and their high school years and their love of that movie is wrapped up in memories, which you can't replace, you know. So I think the fact that I love the character so much, and I kind of want to reimagine it as something different, you know. So let the movie from the '80s stand on its own and be its own thing, because I'm not trying to replace that at all, you know. I want to do something else with the character, something, you know, that I would love to see it in. So that's what I've got going on right now.
Very cool. And best of luck at the all these award shows coming up. I really hope Sausage Party gets in there.
I do too. Thank you so much, and thanks for liking the movie. I mean, 7 years of working on it is a long time to wait to show it to people, and to get this kind of reaction is so, you know, our hearts swell. It's awesome. Great. We love it. People love it.
Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks. Bye.